Yeah. So what we like to do is we like to get as many of us together as can on a monthly basis and have an interesting conversation, but also an interesting speaker, and also share some of the things that we're doing as a group. And we like to have a spotlight for one of our select members each time as well. And this time around it's Lizzy. So we'll go through to about 2:30, and in turn, I won't bother sharing slides, but last time around we heard from Steve Harris. So Steve talked to us about what they can do and some of the grants and things that are around, how they can help. And we had our guest speaker was Rob Stone from Instaloft, who's been put forward, and they may have had it now. I'm not sure he's been awarded Entrepreneur of the Year, but one of those. So that was a pretty inspirational story about how he basically went from being bankrupt to having a multi-million-pound business. So that was really good. So that's kind of stuff. So no pressure, Nick. You've got to live up to that kind of standing. And what we'll do is we'll ask Lizzy just to talk us through and just for 10 or 15 minutes, something like that, and then we'll come to you, Nick, if that's okay.
Absolutely perfect.
Brilliant. So yeah, Lizzy been a select member for a while, always got a big smile on her face, very enthusiastic, love every time. You can always, the energy that Lizzy brings is fantastic. So Lizzy, over to you.
Well, thank you, Kevin. So rather than just do the stuff, oh, this is what I do and this is how I help, I'm going to tell a few stories. So, and all related to leadership and being entrepreneurs and the skills that we have to have an entrepreneur. So I'll take you back to when I was born, which is 28 weeks. And I don't know if you can see that. I was born at 28 weeks with a 5% chance of survival. Now that set me up for determination no matter what. And that is a really good quality that we need to have in business, determination to go over the odds no matter. Obviously I can't remember because I was only in a cot, but I had nothing given to me. I was just put there to live or die, and clearly I lived. No idea what my birth weight was because I was too little to be weighed, and my mother knitted that in order for me to go home. So statistics, we could all read statistics, and I know obviously with your the Bismarck program and the scorecard, that's all really important, but sometimes it's important to not let the statistics stop us. So that 5%, I could have lied there thinking, well, I've got 90% chance of dying, I may as well just turn up now and stop, but I didn't. And that has been my defining moment for the rest of my life. Any hurdle that comes across, let's just get rid of it and just overcome it, and just not only think, how am I going to cover it, how high am I to go over that hurdle? So that's one first little tip. The second tip, I will take you back to the 12th of March 2012. I left the army 3 years ago after 25 years in the army to Lieutenant Colonel. On that day in March, I was standing on the tarmac, waiting to board a plane to Afghanistan. All I had in my pocket was a little angel, which I have here somewhere, with my little message on the back from my daughter Adina, who was 10 at the time, to say, "Come home, mummy, stay safe." I had a choice, but I never saw it as a choice. I had a choice whether to go to Afghanistan or not, but I knew I had to go, because if I didn't go, someone else could take my place, or would have to take my place, and they could come back in that coffin that we see on the news, draped in the Union Jack, being paraded through Button Bassett, and I could never have done that. So I had to get on that plane no matter what. Partly also because I was 8th generation army and being brought up in that just do what you need to do. But as I got on that plane, I looked around us, and I knew at the time 1 in 6 of those people would not be returning. And of those, the remainder 1 in 6 would come back with such severe injuries. So looking around this room now, can you imagine 2 of you would never come the end of this call, and another one would possibly be so severely injured that you never recognise them again. But I knew that wasn't going to be me, because I was there to do support healthcare for 6,000 troops. But as we came to land, the pilot came over the tannoy and said, the plane will go pitch black, and put your helmet on, put your body armour on, get in the brace position. He then came over and said, we're just about to be mortared. Don't worry about it. I've done it before. I'll get you down safely, because this always happens. And it was just like we were in turbulence in those days, if you remember flying with turbulence. His calmness came over, and we thought, right, we're in the safe hands. It's going to be okay. So calmness is a really important quality as a leader, as an entrepreneur. But that point, I knew what courage was, not for us on the plane going to Afghanistan, but he was getting us down there. And that was the 5th time that week. So as we landed, it was like, whew, made it, hurrah. But I knew that he had to do that for 3 or 4 times a week for the following 6 months. So that to me was courage, doing something that you're scared to do, but you do it no matter what. Which brings us on to another bit of that tour, which is quite relevant now with all the awful stuff that's going on in Afghanistan. I was supporting a whole team, providing safe and effectiveness for the whole of Afghanistan. At the time, it was a very, very horrible place in the fact we were having soldiers killed 2 or 3 times a week. Because we are, as nurses, compassionate, we were treating them for their injury. Now, we were navigating, I wasn't doing the clinical nursing, I was supporting them. They were navigating having Taliban in one bed and a soldier that they tried to blow up in the next bed. But their compassion came over, no matter what. They just saw that as somebody who had an injury that needed the best care. And when I left Afghanistan, we were awarded by the CQC, the Care Quality Commission, as an exemplar for global healthcare. So compassion is another tip. And as part of that, we have to work together. Whether we're working with our clients or we're working with a team, we have to collaborate. And that is another 100% skill that we have to develop. But also, the other thing we have to do is to create opportunities. So during my career, when I was offered to do a degree, which I did because I was told at school, you're too thick to go to university, be a nurse. So another tip, don't ever believe what you're told, because it's not true. I was given an opportunity to do a degree, and it was amazing, went well, got a first 9 months, and then I was offered to do a master's, and then I was offered to do a PhD. At the time, no nurses were doing PhDs because it was only doctors. So I decided to put up a case talking about hurdles and put up a case that nurses should do PhDs and I should be the first one. And I had so many hurdles to overcome because I am convinced that the funders, who I was very lucky to be funded, wanted me to be the proving that nurses were not capable of PhDs. So I just jumped higher. And as part of that, I explored the impact of military life on families. And as a result of that, I was traveling around the world, supporting, presenting my research. And as a result, I was so passionate about supporting nurses in their empowerment that I was appointed Global Head of Nursing for the International Committee in Military Medicine. So it was such an honour to do that. And then I got appointed Principal Fellow of the Higher Education Academy for my contribution to global health of higher education. But that doesn't matter, they're just like awards you get, which is really great. But what's really important of that is it's important that we celebrate success. So how often do we boost other people up, but we don't boost ourselves up? So having that acknowledgement of the things that we achieve. So having those cheerleaders in our teams, and this group is a massive opportunity. We all support each other, and it's a great way to support each other as cheerleaders. Another defining moment was and this is how I'm doing what I'm doing now. I was bullied quite a lot in the army. Now, I take full responsibility for that. I was a complete victim, didn't realise it, and I was right for it. And I'm so grateful for every opportunity that created, because that has made me who I am now. One day in a meeting, I had had enough. I'd been doing a research project for 2 months. I'd been building the department, a new department I created for military nursing academic for 2 years. The night before, my boss had sent out an email which had gone to the whole of defence, completely destroyed my research, which he didn't even know about, but he just decided to do his own thing that was not research based. That's a whole nother story. And in that one email, he potentially destroyed the reputation of the whole department. So I was furious, and I don't normally get angry, as you well know. So the next morning, we had our departmental meeting, which I used to normally dread, because I never wanted to speak up, because I've always felt I would be scared I'd be pushed down. And I told everyone before the meeting, I'm just going to say something. And they said, oh yeah, great. It's about some time somebody said something. So I stood up and I said my piece, and I did it in a very empowered but confident way. And I owned myself at that moment. And at that moment, when I knew enough was enough, and everybody around the table went quiet, they all started looking at their papers as if I didn't exist, which reinforced me even more that I was doing it for them too, because they were too scared to speak up. I vowed at that point I would get rid of toxic leadership, because it can destroy so many lives. So this is what I'm doing now. I now, as a coach, I help leaders stand tall, no longer small. I help them find their voice. So when they find their voice, everything changes. And by doing that, they feel confident, they feel empowered, and they support their teams to be the same. So there is no space for toxic leadership. And once they've done that, then their teams are empowered, and then I help them set their vision and their purpose, so that actually they know why they're on this planet. And as part of my legacy, I found that I had generated for PhDs. When I left the army, I found out on my dining out that they were funding nurses annually, every year, for a PhD. So it's just part of the course now. So now I coach people, I coach leaders one-to-one just to unpick their stuff, so that actually they then soar. I've had people have been promoted twice during my leadership program who've lost their way and suddenly stand up. One even got appointed financial director because he showed up so powerfully at the meeting, he didn't even apply for the job. The CEO said, I need that guy on my board. And then I do a group coaching program. And then I go into businesses to help them identify their vision and their purpose, and also help them embed it in every single person of the organisation. So that's what I do. I had to give a monthly workshop free once a month, and I've got one coming up in October about identity and belonging, because fitting in is the opposite of belonging, because you can only belong to yourself. If you fit in, you're that chameleon that just always is changing, not to yourself. So I did get a few medals while I was there, but what I want you to do today is just really think about something that you can celebrate, that you've achieved, because I'm sure you're very good at boosting other people, but you're not necessarily good at celebrating what you've achieved. And COVID has been an extraordinary 18 months. So the very fact you're here now, the very fact that you're built your business online or whatever you're doing, it just shows the courage that you've got within you that you might not even realise. So love to have a conversation with you about anything I've discussed. And yeah, so my programme is SOAR, because that's what we all want to do. Stand tall, no longer small, because we have everything within us. Nothing needs to be fixed. Nothing's ever broken. We just need to have a conversation in order to unpick all that. So thank you for listening.
Brilliant. Well done. Thank you very much, Lizzie. Excellent. Yeah, absolutely brilliant. And that, yeah, very, very inspirational, and fitting in is the opposite of belonging. I like that. Yeah, very, very much. So really, really good. Let's see. Any questions for Lizzie? And I just need to change the view because at the moment I'm not seeing everybody. So who's got a question for Lizzie, or Dr. Liz, as I often refer to her?
Yeah, it's interesting, the Lizzie bit, because when I first left the army, I didn't see it relevant to call myself doctor because I was here to do what I did, and it's in fact it was B and I with Kevin. He said you've got to call yourself doctor because that's who you are, and it's like Dr. Lizzie sort of became my kind of brand. So that's the only reason I'm using it, not for the ego side. It's just that it's sort of like become my brand, Dr. Lizzie.
Brilliant.
I've got a question.
Yeah, Nick.
That was brilliant, by the way. Oh, blimey, I've got some big boots to fill now, haven't I? From a rugby transition into the world of business, how hard did you find that? Because I know we always use sport transition into normal life is the biggest example of that is military transferring into civilian life. How did you find that? What was the biggest challenge there? Because you seem like it was you just taking it and just prompt yourself from there to there. But what was that journey like?
Hugely liberating.
Awesome.
I think, you know, I'd had an incredible career. It was amazing. But I think that moment when I stood up, I realized that at that point, I wanted to support others to stand tall on who they are. It's taken me a while, as Kevin knows, to kind of realize what I actually have been doing. But I think at that point, I thought, right, I don't want to have a boss. I felt I was in a box, that I was doing what compliance and all that stuff. And so at that point, I decided I'd set up my own business. But having said that, I never intended to be a business owner because at the time I was given loads of consultancy work. I thought, this is marvelous, pay for what I do coaching, do workshops, what I love. And I didn't have a clue about a business. Never occurred to me that I might suddenly find it just vanished because COVID hit, that I would suddenly have to find my own clients. So that's been a massive learning curve, but something I've just really embraced because the learning is phenomenal. And as a coach, I can only coach my clients way more than breakthroughs I've had myself, because as soon as I have my own breakthroughs, I can then hand them over to my clients. So constant learning, constant embracing it, peaks and troughs, but that's all part of riding the waves.
Brilliant.
Very good. Yeah. Thanks, Nick. Great question. Anyone else got a question for Dr. Lizzie?
Hi, Dr. Lizzie. You okay?
Yeah, I'm very well, thank you.
It was just a question in terms of the type of person that you help day to day.
Yes.
Is there a particular demographic, age, sex that tends to come to you for any particular reason, or age of business owner, for example?
Yeah, generally it's sort of like kind of 40s to 50s. It's generally, if it's business, they are frustrated that they just can't speak up. They know that they've got it in them, but they just need a bit of a boost. And then once they find that it's nothing to do, and often I find the reason I'm so passionate about toxic leadership is that all the clients I've had, they don't see their boss as a toxic leader. They see that I'm just not good enough. And then once we unpick that conversation and they suddenly own who they are, and they realize actually it's nothing to do with them, that they have it all. It's, as I said in my, I was talking, it's phenomenal just seeing how they just fly. And so entrepreneurs also, it's more those that just want to move up, but actually don't know how. But I make it clear I'm not a business coach. I'm very much into the mindset. Because if we believe in ourselves, we can achieve anything. And Emma Raducanu just showed that. It's nothing to do. I mean, obviously she's an amazing tennis player, but the belief she had of staying in the present, every single point matters. She didn't care about, she probably wasn't focusing even on the next point. It was just every shot. And so once we start acknowledging who we are and acknowledging who we are inside. So yes, it's those who I can tell when I do sort of a vetting process by having conversations. I can see they're just not aware of how awesome they are. So, I think it's they are taking responsibility. They want to make a difference. They're purpose driven, rather than the victims who the whole world's against them. And actually, they wanted to that staying in that victim place is serving them for some reason.
Thank you.
Does that help?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Right. If there's no other questions.
Thanks, everyone.
Okay.
And thank you so much for your lovely comments. It's so kind.
Thank you, Lizzy. That's fantastic. And I would encourage all of us to have a separate conversation with Lizzy and just find out how you can maybe work with Lizzy, how you can help each other. It's definitely worth doing. So
and I always have a free conversation initially for a client, but obviously I'm just all about collaboration. So these amazing people, and you're all amazing. So collaboration is just, I love it. What we're here for. So from one inspirational person to another, I think we'll move over to Nick then. And I know Nick we all know he's an ex-pro rugby player, but I know he's also got a real passion for leadership and teams, and I think he's a big believer in that it's not what you do, it's the way that you do it that matters. And I've known Nick for a little while and always enjoy any time that I spend with Nick. So Nick, over to you.
Thank you very much, Kevin, and thank you, Caroline. First of all, thanks very much for inviting me. And I suppose Caroline, a while back in Sept, when I agreed to do the session, I said, what do you want me to do? Because I love the sound of my own voice and I can talk forever. I want it to be relevant to you guys, so you can get some takeaways. So yeah, you're right. Everyone pretty much knows my personal brand it revolves around my businesses, but predominantly rugby. But I never really tell my rugby story. I've got quite an unusual rugby story, and it's like everything. I suppose we always focus on the outcomes. We don't focus on how we got there. And I'm eternally grateful for what rugby gave me. But by way of introduction, my name's Nick Baxter. I run a few businesses. My main business is a business called Baxter Williams, and we're a recruitment business. I've got another business called Connect. Connect is split into three, really. There's an employee engagement business where, not dissimilar to Lizzy, we go into organisations and talk about culture and talk about how to make organisations the best versions themselves. Having come from an elite sports background, culture is king. I've been in some teams where on paper they're not the greatest teams, but they've been able to collaborate and build and foster such an amazing culture that we've been unstoppable. And that's more around, again, as Lizzy said, more around leadership, but equally so around the kind of culture. So that's another element of business. And then I was really, really fortunate, and Kevin's quite a humble bloke, alongside Caroline and Louise. I was on the Elevate programme last year, and I found it incredibly useful. I did the Goldman Sachs high growth program, which everyone harps on about, and the Elevate program was equally powerful, more so for some of the peer-to-peer involvement that I got. And I think I'm a massive fan of BizSmart and that peer-to-peer bit. And on the back of the Elevate program, I was able to access a grant which enabled me to start a business called COVID Safe UK. When the legs kind of fell out of recruitment last year, I was able to create COVID Safe UK, and we're a year on. I think we kind of did like 350k in our first year, which was pretty phenomenal from a standing start, really, and a business plan that took me like 4 weeks to kind of muster together. So I didn't want to be one of those businesses that profited from COVID. So last week we made quite a sizable donation to Acorns charity, and charity is quite important to me. So whether you'll see me do a bike ride, or you see me do a triathlon, or you'll see me do a sleep out, charity is really important. I'm a massive believer in giving back. So regardless of what you get, you give back. The universe, and you give back, regardless of how much you get and how much you accumulate. So anyway, I'm also a non-executive director of a business called Nifty Communication, a digital marketing agency. I'm a charity ambassador for St. Richard's, Acorns Hospice, and Wooden Spoon. And I've been really fortunate I've been appointed as a non-executive director of the Local Enterprise Partnership. I don't know if you know that, Kev. So that was a couple of months ago, and which we need to have a chat at some stage, because my element that I'm looking after there is the champion the SME community within Worcestershire, and that's through the Growth Hub. So that's me. What I want to talk about today is my rugby story, because everyone always sees the end result. I've been really fortunate. In terms of Rugby Accolades, I was the first player to score 100 league tries. the National Leagues. I was the only player to score 150 league tries. I played England Sevens, England Students, England Sevens at the Commonwealth Games in Kuala Lumpur in '98. I played for the Barbarians 8 or 9 times. And actually, I was 11 stone at 18, and I'm from a council estate in Longbridge. So I played football, and I was under 16, West Midlands under 16s footballer with Lee Sharp. And I didn't get a YTS, and I was devastated. And I went to the sixth form, and I stayed at a mate's house in Upper Sixth. So this probably would have been about March, and I stayed at his house. Richard Revel, his name is. If it wasn't for Richard Revel and having a beer with him that night, I don't think I'd ever played rugby. And anyway, I stayed at his house, and the next morning he went to play rugby for Kings Norton Rugby Club. So I don't know if you know Kings Norton Rugby Club, Junction 2, the M42 Hopwood Services, that's where they're based. And I remember going to the Bunbury Road, if anyone knows that, in Northfield, to get his lift from a guy called Chris Cooksey. And he said, "This is Nick, he's my mate from school, he's come along to watch us play." And I remember Chris just looking over the driver's seat saying, "With 3 men down, we've had 3 cry-offs, you're going to have to play." And I was like, no, I'm not playing. I literally was 11 stone. Anyone that sees me from school now, the school reunion, everyone thinks I've been on steroids because, like, I was the smallest kid in the year, and, like, literally I'm 17 stone now. And so I got to the game, and I can't tell you the fear and the trepidation. So, like, I didn't even know the difference between rugby union and rugby league. I didn't even know the captain of rugby union was. I was a soccer player. I was a rough-ass Premier League. I was a soccer player. I wasn't interested in rugby at all. So anyway, we turned up, and we turned up at a club called Old Coventrians on the A45 as you go through Coventry, opposite the same as in the casino there. And they just said to me that my team talk essentially was, if anyone runs at you, grab them around the waist and hold on really tight. And if you get the ball, just listen to where we're going to go, and we'll tell you where to run. I was thinking, can't really be that hard. And I got the ball. I got the ball like within 5 minutes of the game, and I was pretty quick. I was like 200 meters, so I was pretty quick. But I was more scared than quick, and I literally ran around people and got over the try line and threw the ball down like American football. And went to high five my teammates who were looking at me like, "What are you doing? What have you done?" I said, "What?" They said, "No, you've got to place the ball down." So about 5 minutes later, I get the ball again, and I score. So I get over the try line, but instead of putting the ball down over the try line, I go over the dead ball line, which is the line at the end of the pitch, and then put the ball down. So I'm high-fiving again. No one's giving me a high five, and I think, what's going on? And then at the third time, I actually scored. I scored, and that was my first try. So 2 minutes before the end of the game, I'm thinking, this ain't too bad, I don't mind rugby. And then I get my first tackle. So this guy's running towards me, and I remember grabbing him around the waist and hold on tight. So I grabbed him around the waist, and anyone that knows me from my rugby career knows I wasn't a massive tackler. And so I grabbed him around the waist, but I didn't hold on tight, and he kept on running, and the back of his heel caught my mouth here. And the flap of skin that's behind your tongue never grew back. It literally came out. My lip was out here. We finished the game, and I just thought, I love this game. I love this game of rugby. And I went home, and my mum obviously hadn't, so my mum and dad hadn't seen me since the day before. I rocked up to the front door with like bruises on my face, my lip out here. And my mum was like, "What's happened? Have you been in the fight?" And I remember this day, my mum reminded me this earlier in the year. She said, "You looked up and said, 'No, I've just found rugby and I'm going to be a rugby player.'" And my old man was like, "You're not playing rugby if that's what it's going to do to you," because my parents were really big into academia. And so that would have been the March. I went back the following week to play. And I remember saying, who was the fullback that was helping me through this game? And they were like, "No, he played for Old Coventry, and we had to borrow 2 players from them." I was like, "He was really helpful. Who do I thank?" And they said, "Oh, he was a teammate from the other team." And I played 5 more games till April, middle of April. And then the season finished. And so I was off to university. I went to university. I did a degree in business studies and marketing. And I remember before I went to university, I got a phone call from the coach, Phil Maynard, who subsequently was the coach of Worcester. And he said, "Nick, I've heard you've been playing in the Colts. Here's some really good things. We'd like you to come and play for the first team." I was like, "No, the first team of Kings Norton." You've got to remember, there's tiers in rugby. The Premiership being the first tier. Kings Norton were like the 13th, 14th tier. Like that. It's like Sunday League football in terms of the Premiership in football. But I was absolutely over the moon. I said, "Okay, I'll do it." I said, "We'll pay your train fare." And I said, "Okay." So I went to university, and all the boys at university, there were 3 or 4 lads at university that were playing at clubs, like National League clubs. But the lads at university were just interested in getting on the smash. And by Christmas, they just couldn't be bothered going back to the club, and they just played for the university. And they used to take the mickey out of me because I used to cycle to the train station at Derby train station, 3 or 4 miles, park my bike up, get the train from Derby to Birmingham to Longbridge. And then my mum and dad didn't have a car, so I used to have to thumb a lift, just walk thumb a lift towards Hopwood Services. So I'm walking on the road going towards literally that, thumbing a lift. And I did that. And they were taking them and said, "What are you doing?" I said, "You know what?" And rugby wasn't professional then. I said, "I just want to play rugby. And these guys are giving me an opportunity. I want to play." And I remember being on a train the Freshers' Week, and I'd scored 6 tries against Pershore, my very first senior game for Kings Norton. And I remember there's a rugby magazine called Rugby Special. And at the back of the Rugby Special, they had this regional, like, clipping. They'd clip it into the national magazine for regional results. And my name was there. They spelt it wrong. They spelt it Bakster, and it was my name. And I just remember being like super stoked that my name was in this Rugby Special magazine. And I was on a train. I was almost nudging the guy and say, "That's me in the magazine." And I vowed I'd be on the front of that magazine. And I stayed at university. At my 3rd year at university, I got my first England students cap, like literally 24 months after picking a rugby ball up. My 9th game of rugby, I was in the county. My 11th game of rugby, I was playing for the Midlands. And it was down to the guy, Phil Maynard, who was a coach. He, in the 3rd year at university, after I played against France for English students, I tore my cruciate ligaments playing against Leicester University. And they said I wouldn't play rugby again. And they said, "You know, you've tore your cruciate ligaments." I had a reconstruction, and I was on crutches for like 6 months. When we talk about resilience, at the time I used to go to the Derby Royal Infirmary, and an ambulance would pick me up from home every morning. I'd be in this ambulance, I'd go to the Royal Infirmary for an hour of physiotherapy, then an hour of occupational therapy. And I don't know if you've seen one of those things they put on the knee. It's like a knee brace, and it only bends like that much. And then over the months, they let it bend a little bit more. And I did this physio, and they said, "You know, there's no point doing the physio. Just all you want to do, you're not going to play rugby again. Just get the physio up so you can enjoy some kind of sports or active outdoor living, but you're not going to play again." And I remember I signed for Worcester. I signed for Worcester in the Bull in Kings Norton, because that's where the boys were in Kings Norton, over a fruit machine. I signed my papers for Worcester Rugby Club, and I remember them signing me and saying, "We're not sure you're going to play, but you know, we've got some decent physios and we'll see what happens." And I signed for Worcester, and Worcester were in Midlands 2. So you've got Midlands 2, Midlands 1, Division 5 North, Division 4, 3, 2, 1 Premiership. And I rehabbed. When I say I rehabbed hard. Like, I couldn't work. My mum and dad didn't have much money. The club gave me a gym membership, and I just rehabbed really, really hard. I ate really good food. I didn't drink for like a year, and just trained and trained and trained. I came back from that rehab. I was invincible. I put about 3 stone on. I was quicker, I was stronger, and that was it. That was a start. So Midlands 2, but I'm thinking, I'm signing for Worcester. I'll find my level, and if Worcester get promoted, then I'll find my level at whatever level. And I went with Midlands 2, top try scorer, Midlands 1, top try scorer, D5. I graduated, and we became professional. And so I don't know if you know Cecil Duckworth. Cecil Duckworth was an amazing Worcester stalwart within Worcester. He created the combi boiler. So he created the combi boiler in his garage in Macclesfield, and that combi boiler became a business called Worcester Heat Systems, which he subsequently sold to Bosch for about 80 million quid. So he decided he'd always put some money into cricket club. He decided to put the money into the rugby club, and that was the start, really. I stopped having to cycle to the train station, having had 4 bikes nicked, and they gave me a little Nissan Micra. That was my club car, my name down the side of it, and I was proud as punch, literally driving around with this little Nissan Micra. I used to have to stop at Burton on the A38 on the way to Worcester, because I could never do the whole journey without having to stretch my legs after a training session. So, and that Nissan, every time I see a Nissan Micra now, I just think back to those days. And I was just really fortunate. I won't bore you with what happened at Worcester, but it was an incredible ride all the way through the leagues. Some real giant killing opportunities. And then the year I got to, was in the championship for 2 years. The year before we got promoted, they released me. And I then moved on to a club called Pertemps Bees. And it's ironic because I'm in the chief exec of Wasps office right now. And Pertemps Bees, we had the biggest ever cup upset of all time. The year we beat Wasps in the cup, because we used to have like an FA Cup equivalent. We don't have that anymore in rugby. And we beat Wasps in the quarterfinals. That year, Wasps won the Heineken Cup and they won the Premiership. They had like Lawrence Delalio, Matt Dawson, Rob Howley, Simon Shaw, Trevor Liotta. They had all their superstars playing. When I talk about culture and adversity, I was a wine merchant, we had a bouncer, we had a plumber, we had a couple of teachers, we had a doctor, we had a car salesman, and we beat the best team in Europe. And we only just beat them, don't get me wrong, but we beat them and they underestimated us and we got a slim lead, then they were beating us 5 minutes to go and then we nipped it. And through my rugby career, I've been really, really fortunate walking out at the opening ceremony of the Commonwealth Games in '98 at Kuala Lumpur, waving to the TV camera saying, "Hi, Mum," even though I forgot my mum was actually in the crowd and she travelled to see us. That was amazing, sitting in a changing room in between Jonah Lomo and Christian Cullen. That was spectacular. And I've travelled the world. And I suppose the reason I told you my rugby story is because everyone sees the end result of the tries and the representing your country. Not many people understand my journey and the story. And I never went to public school. I never knew what life was like outside of Accountant State Longbridge until I embraced the game of rugby, until I graduated and until I was able to play rugby. And Caroline was keen for me to talk about some of the stuff that I've got from playing rugby. I suppose it's more the experiences around rugby that I've got. And the biggest thing is my network. You know, rugby has got not just the old boys network, because the game has incredibly changed now. It's no longer a game owned by public schools. It's owned by anybody that's got idiot enough to pick a rugby ball up and get onto a park. But, you know, it's an accessible game. And then I moved into business. So I don't know if anyone knows, I had a business before called the Worcester Wine Company. So basically what happened was I finished sport at 33, finished rugby at 33, got signed by Bees, which was a championship side. And I was trying to get into marketing. I did this marketing degree. I did a diploma in marketing whilst I was playing at Worcester. I did some extra CPD. I couldn't get a job. So someone said, "Why don't you get a sales job?" So I got a sales job working for Bulmers as a Strongbow rep. And then I moved to Hardy's. And so I did my wine qualifications. I've got a diploma in wine. I'm like a wine buff. I'm like the most ludicrous person. Like a rugby player, then literally a diploma in wine. So like I'm a wine buff, and a friend of mine called me. What I didn't say before was I always wanted to work for myself. So before, I didn't think I was going to be a professional rugby player when I went to university because the game wasn't professional. I won an entrepreneurs award when I was at school. They gave us £15 and we had to go out and either buy stuff, wholesale and sell it. I figured you could only buy so many candles with £15. So my mum was a dressmaker, so I bought a shed load of material, shed load of potpourri, and made these little potpourri pots and made about 200 quid. And I remember walking the streets with my mum and dad, my dad there making sure no one nicked me, and to say, "Listen, I'm selling this stuff." So I always knew I wanted to work for myself. I've always been an entrepreneur. And so when I went to Bulmers, and then I went to Hardy's, a friend of mine rang me and said, "Listen, I'm the landlord of a shop in Bromwich Road. An old guy, he's retiring, he's selling his wine shop. Do you want to buy it?" And man, I learned so many lessons in that business. I must have lost about 50k in that business. I learned so many lessons. I was so naive. I was a 33-year-old rugby player that decided he was going to be a businessman. And it was brilliant. I made lots of mistakes. And I don't regret any of those mistakes. I don't make them anymore. But what I did do was, it was the first time I saw that my rugby network was embracing me in my business pursuit. And all of the, you guys would have been there. Most of the guys who own businesses all in Worcester, all were rugby fans, came and supported me. And I had 4 incredible years. The last year was quite devastating because it was a 2010 recession. Supermarkets had got quite cute with their purchasing and the procuring of wines. There wasn't really a place without the buying power of a Majestics. And I learned some lessons. But I also learned that, because I was front-facing in that business, and the front-facing element, the salesman element of me has always been a strong part, but the back end and the behind the scenes, that's a bit that I really fell by the wayside. Anyway, I regained resilience. My business has failed, and I need to put some food on the table. It's really interesting, actually, because one of my friends, my best friend from school, was a builder. And I just said to him, "Listen, I've closed my shop. I'm going to get back into national accounts," because that's what I was doing when I was at Hardy's, as a national account manager. "I'm going to get back into that, but I need a summer. I need some cash. What can I do?" And he said, "Oh, you can come and help me." And I remember working on a building site in Hereford, and there was a surveyor, and I was on his little truck. There's a surveyor that walked past and goes, "Are you Nick Baxter?" I said, yeah. So what are you doing here? I said, "Putting food on the table." I'm not embarrassed about being in the building site. I'm putting food on the table. That's what I'm going to do. And I did that for the summer. I went to Michael Page as a recruit, as a candidate, and said to Michael Page, what can you, can I get back into sales? This is what I've done before. I was national account executive at almost as a national account manager. They said, "Yeah, brilliant. Have you ever thought about recruitment?" I said, "No, not really." And as it was most of my business ideas, I had a beer with someone, got convinced to be a recruiter. So, when I went to that business, I was 38 and I was only on like 28k, and I had to drive to Great Bar. Drive to just outside of Hell's Owen and cycle in because I couldn't afford the train. I couldn't afford car parking in town. I was literally on my ass. And they said, I took this job because they said if you hit bonus, you can double your money. And I said, "How long does it take to hit bonus?" They said, "Well, it's going to take you 6 to 9 months." I couldn't afford 6 to 9 months. Like, I needed to do that yesterday. And so within the fourth month, I hit bonus, and I became a manager in Michael Page, the quickest time anyone became a manager in that PLC. Within 12 months, I became a director in that business within 2.5 years. The quickest anyone had become a director in that business. And one of my good friends who'd signed me from Worcester to Bees, he'd moved to the Bahamas, and he bought some beach-fronted land selling £1 million condos. And he sold two to an American guy that was started up a recruitment business in America. They were doing $88 million a year in 4 years, and they were coming to the UK. And he said, "Nick, you come and help me." And I helped them build that business. And all the back office stuff that I'd been primarily poor at, I had to. Like, I opened an office in Reading. We had no back office. We had no finance. We had no. I had to sort the leases out. Had to sort the contracts out. We opened an office in Reading, then opened an office in Birmingham, then opened an office in Manchester. And before I left, I signed a lease on an office in London. And they said, and one of my good friends, a multi-millionaire property developer, godfather of my kids, and an ex-rugby player as well. He said, "Listen, Nick, why are you doing this and making this business money? Why don't you do it for yourself?" And 5 years ago in October, so actually it's my anniversary next month on the 15th. It's 5 years since I started Baxter Williams. I started Baxter Williams at Red Point Climbing Centre. Another one of my rugby mates owns that business, and I said, "Listen, I haven't got any money for rent, but can I just kind of have a space for 6 months?" And he said, "Yes, you can have a space for 6 months." And we employed my 13th starter starts tomorrow in 5 years. And I'm no more successful than everyone who's in this room. The people that turn over more money and got more success. But what I'm driven by is delivering. What I'm driven by is making sure that I'm creating really strong teams. And if anything I got from rugby is around resilience, that 12 months to get back from that injury. Anyone that's been through an injury, to come back and just to walk is a different thing. To come back and be elite sportsman, it was hardcore. Lots of tears. My mental health was at an all-time low, and it gave me a lot of rugby. Gave me perspective. We talked about it before, Lizzie, about being able to become present and to be able to give yourself perspective. Resilience, communication. That's a big one. In a rugby team, you need to communicate. You need to shout. You need to have a voice heard. But more importantly, as a captain and as a vice captain of rugby teams, you need to be able to lead as well. So one of the biggest thing I suppose I took from rugby was being able to get into the hearts and minds of people, get them on the same page as you, and to create strong winning teams. And that's kind of what I've done. So the reason I kind of gave you the business side as well is no one really knows my story. No one really knows the rugby story. Some people know a little bit about the Worcester Wine Cup now. I'm really proud of it. I'm really proud that I've had failures. I'm really proud that I've had failures in rugby, and I'm really proud that I've had failures in business, because without those failures, you don't become the best version of yourself without seeing adversity. And the sweetness of success, however you want to define success, is only really, really, really exemplified by where you've come from and the adversity you've been through to kind of get there. So in terms of opening up to anyone, if anyone wants to talk, what my strengths are around helping people build strong teams, what my strengths are around helping people understand exactly what they really need as opposed to what they think they need from a recruitment perspective. So I'm really keen to talk to me about all things people, all things team. Don't want to steal any thunder from you, Lizzy, because you're more around purpose and around vision and mission and values. But I hope you enjoyed my story. I don't tell that story very often, and I've never told anyone really in a business setting before, because people always talk to me and say, listen, talk to me about challenges with recruitment, or talk to me about building strong teams, or talk to me about building a strong employer brand or strong employee value proposition. So I'm hoping you found it useful, and thank you for allowing me to share my story with you guys this morning.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Nick. Yeah, brilliant. Really inspirational, actually. And I learned a lot of things about you that I didn't know before. And I've got some lovely mental pictures of you, one of which is you 17 stone in a micro. I think that's that's the other, and the other is you making these little potpourri things. I think that's I could just picture you doing both of those things. So ideally together, in the micro with that would be brilliant. Fantastic. Well, let's open the floor and see what people would like to ask you. So who'd like to kick off with a question for Nick? Lizzy.
No, so amazing and inspiring. Thanks, Nick. So this is a question you probably can't answer, but had you not found rugby, how different do you think, because the skills you gain for rugby, resilience, all that stuff that's driven you to have that passion, do you feel that was in you already and the rugby just brought it out?
Yeah, 100%. I think so. Because what it's like, isn't it? We talk about, are we creatures of our stimuli? Are we creatures of our DNA? So as a footballer, I didn't have that same level of resilience, because you don't need to in football. And I know disrespect to football, but it's just a different kind of confrontation. It's a different kind of interaction. And so rugby requires you to have a certain level of tenacity beyond a less non-contact sport. So I think rugby was the thing that dragged it out of me and allowed me to do it. Because once you've done it on the rugby part, like, I'm not intimidated by, I've recruited some really high level roles. I've recruited finance directors at Dunelm and at Halfords and at IMI and GKN. And so, like, I'm not intimidated when I go and see a CEO, because I played against Joe Malone. And if you ever play against someone like Joe Malone, it's not really, and so those experiences, they kind of help you. The thing that I probably wouldn't have had initially would have been my network. But I'm also a massive believer in it. If you've got the right energy, you'll attract the right energy. So I think the network would have come. It wouldn't have come so readily available, and it wouldn't have been at my disposal. Like, my disposal is just like, I knew I was in Leicester this morning. I knew I had to be back. And I thought, where do I go? And I rang up Steve Vaughan, who actually was the CEO of Wasps, who played football with me at school. And so, I just said, listen, Steve, I'm passing through. I haven't seen the new training facility. Can I pop in and have a look at it? And can I use your office for an hour? So that kind of level, it's just like, it's ludicrous. And that wouldn't have been so readily available. And I think, like everyone, I'd have got there in the end, probably not as quick and probably not with the ease. But yes, I think it's in it. You know what it's like, Lizzie. Everything's in everyone. Like, what you need is something to unlock it. Like, you need something to unlock it, and you need some kind of stimuli to unlock it. But it's in everyone. Everything is in everyone.
Thank you.
Good stuff. Helen, you obviously had a question.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I want to just comment, Nick, that you're very, very humble, because you keep using the word fortunate as if everything just landed in your lap. And it reminds me of the phrase, it's really weird that, because I've actually had someone say, you're really lucky you've got that successful business. I'm like, yeah, the harder I work, the luckier I am. So It's very humble to say fortunate, but I think it obviously a lot comes down to your resilience. And I just wondered, because I wasn't as confident as I am now, I feel like in my 50s, and since I've had a business, I've grown in confidence. You've obviously just shine with confidence. Did you always have that? Or has that come with experience? I was quite shy as a child. Just wondered if you'd already always had that innate confidence that you've got.
Yeah, you know what? I think I have. So I've always been a really strong communicator. So my mum and dad were missionaries in the church. My dad's a pastor. My mum and dad lived in Swaziland for 2 years, missionary, and 6 years in the Philippines. But I remember growing up, I used to live on City Road, around the corner from Bentley Road Hospital, and it was a little bit rough in central Birmingham. So my mum and dad moved to Longbridge. And so I had a couple of years when I was still on the train. So I had to do a bus on the train every morning. And my mum would sit and talk to whoever was next to her every day. So I grew up in a really, just in a way where we just talk to people. And so I've always been a confident communicator. I've always been this confident. I'm always confident about stuff I'm confident about. If I'm not confident about it, you won't hear me. I'll be really quiet. So, but I also agree with you. As you have a business and as you deal with the trials and tribulations of starting and maintaining a business, you become more confident. I also believe, as you probably endorse Lizzy, as you become older, you become more mature. And as you become more mature, less things bother you and you become more present and you're able to give yourself perspective very quickly. You don't live in an egoic state. You don't make decisions in an egoic state. And so you're a little bit more measured. And I'm certainly that. Like, I used to live in an ego state because I was a big burly rugby lad, not cocky, but in an egoic state, because that's what rugby told you to do. Man up, be a tough man, get through it. Absolute nonsense. And like, we're the most sensitive people in the world, rugby players. Once you get under the exterior. But yes, that confidence, yeah, I've always been a confident communicator. If I'm confident in my subject matter, that's when you'll see me start beaming a bit more.
Cool. Sounds like your mum did a great job then. When I was became a parent, I did read once in parenting book that the greatest gift you can give your children is confidence. Because confidence you can achieve all sorts. So I just stuck in my mind that did.
Thank you. No, she did. My mum did. Dad did a great job. You have to meet them at some stage. You'll know when you've met Mr. and Mrs. Baxter. Let me tell you. And you'll be at church the next week without even knowing about it.
Yeah. Any other questions? Yeah, Andy.
Yeah, Nick, very interesting. Really, thanks very much indeed for your time today. I guess my question is, what's next? Are you the sort of person that's going to stand still, or are you going to be launching new projects?
100%, 100%. The thing I need to, and Kev's talked to me about this before, focus is my challenge. So not focus as in I get distracted. I end up working 80 hours trying to do everything. So Baxter Williams is my cash cow. That's a bit that cost me a shed load of money to run. It's got like a 50 grand run rate every month to even open the door. So that's the bit that I have to focus on, because that's where 13 livelihoods stay. Connect is more consultancy. So I've got a number of practitioners that come and deliver those employee engagement programs. And then COVID Safe UK, I've just got a head of sales now for that. COVID Safe UK has probably got 6 to 12 months left. It's mainly around testing now. So my next thing is around diversity and inclusion. That's my next project. So I already do some work with organisations around making sure that they're reaching a diverse pool of candidates in the language they use, the tonality they use, the pools that they're fishing in, and the way that they're trying to attract more diverse candidates. But I think there's a business there, 100%. I've just put a pitch into a local, one of the biggest borough councils in London, around them engaging slightly closer with their community and reaching out to a more diverse candidate pool. So, and I'm really passionate about that. I'm really passionate about, obviously for obvious reasons, I'm really passionate about diversity, but not as a tick boxing exercise, as in organisations' DNA is stronger with diversity. And so, so that's my next one. So I've bought diverseuniverse.co.uk.com, and I really like the diverse city. So I bought diverse.city, so the diversity. So that's going to be the next one. We're just coming up with a program. We're coming up with, because you know what it's like, identifying what we're trying to do and how we're trying to do it. That's what we're doing at the moment. But trying to do that in the most aggressive and busy recruitment time ever known to man, with 1 million open vacancies out in the ether, is very difficult. And I've got a young family as well, who are quite demanding, and rightly so. So yes, that's the next one, Andy. So watch your space. New year, my diversity element. I think I'll keep that as a separate business, as opposed to putting it under Baxter Williams.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Good.
Yeah.
Good luck with it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, you'll have to get the diversity dance group to do you a video or something.
You know what? I like that, Kev. I like that. That's a good idea. In fact, I'm going to do it myself. You haven't seen me on the dance floor yet, have you? Huh?
Well, that's where my thought process started, but then I thought, no, maybe.
Yeah, I'll get a professional in.
Yeah, good. All right. Any other questions for Nick? I think we're about done. Yeah, really, really fascinating, Nick. Really, really enjoyed that. Are you familiar with the podcast that Jake Humphries does called High Performance?
No, I'm not. And I'm really big on my podcast, so please share it with me on email and I'll have a look at it.
Right, here you go. I'll put it into the chat. So it'll be this is the website, but you'll be able to get to the oh, it's not copied. Hang on, why is it not doing that? Here we go. Oh, that should work. You'll be able to get to the actual podcast itself. Yeah, there you go. From that, it's fantastic. So Jake Humphreys, is the presenter. He actually owns a production company, but he does it. He's got a psychologist that's with him as well. It's all around, as you would guess from the name, high performance, and they interview people from the sports world, people from the business world that have made some significant achievements. So they've had people like Toto Wolff and all sorts of great people. Is it Sir Ian? Is it McGeehan? Is that how you pronounce it? Or
McGeehan? Yeah, McGeehan. Yeah.
Yeah, so he's on there as well. It's fascinating. I think everybody would enjoy that. I listen to that on my dog walks and things like that. And there's always some great stuff, because those I think what's really clear and come out from what your talk, Nick, is that there are so many parallels between strong leadership and high performance, that from the business world and the sports world, and particularly the sports into the business world, that it's so relevant, all those experiences that you've had and other people have too. So yeah, it's a good podcast. And Nick, again, would just like to thank you very much for your time today and sharing it with us. So thank you.
Thank you for listening to me, guys. It's been an absolute pleasure. I'm going to go now so I can see the guys outside my door. Kev, let's catch up soon. If anybody wants to catch up with me, Kev, feel free to share my email with these guys. And I've also got a box at Warriors through my Connect business. It was a 30-man box. It's now a 40-man box this year. So if anybody wants to come along, just give me a shout. We'd love to have you there, guys.
Thanks, Nick.
Yeah? All right. Take care, guys. Thank you very much.
See you soon.